Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. How many people in here think they're going to fall asleep halfway through this? Just nod. You all think you're going to. And how many people really didn't want to come? Just nod, because you didn't want to come. And allow me to say what we say in hockey. Suck it up, Buttercup. Okay? How it's going to work. We're going to talk about Me Too, Oh No, which is responding to complaints and concerns in the workplace. Okay? So we're going to talk about that. This is the disclaimer. The disclaimer says law is complicated, right? I had to go to school, all that kind of stuff. This is what the disclaimer really means. I'm not talking about you. I am going to have examples, and some of those examples are going to feel like they happened here because everybody has the same stuff. I am never going to use an example from here. I'm never going to use anything that HR has called me about. Problem is, same problems happen lots of different places. So it's going to sound like you, but somewhere, but I am not going to talk about you. The other thing I tell you about the disclaimer is that if you change a fact, a lot of times you change my opinion on what we should do. The kind of law I do is not clear. It is very gray. There are lots of ifs and ands, and if you change a fact, the rules change, and what are we going to do? It's not cut and dried because it all involves people. And here is the number one rule about people. They're all nuts. Okay? And a big chunk of my job is premised on the idea that people who are really smart, who are kind, who would not intentionally hurt other people, do things exactly the opposite. That they do dumb stuff that is unkind and that hurts other people. Okay? That is my job, is really premised on the idea of what we all do. Okay? This is me. My name is Jo Whitney. I'm an attorney at the Davis Brown Law Firm. I have been there 30 years, which is how I earned this gray hair. Okay, I also have a 14-year-old boy. That's the other half of the gray hair. Okay? I do labor and employment law, and in fact, I chair our labor and employment law division, which means I boss a lot of people around. I am our firm's privacy officer, A, because I know a lot about HIPAA, and B, because if you screwed up, I'm going to show up in your door and tell you. And not everybody likes to do that, to be clear about those kinds of things. And I've done this for a really long time. So the thing I always tell people in hospitals is if you were a cardiac nurse and you were going to talk to me about my heart, I'm going to listen. I might not agree with everything you said. I might not take every piece of advice you said because I'm not giving up chocolate. And I might not do that, but I'm going to listen because you're a cardiac nurse, right? This is what I do all the time, right? Sex harassment, labor and employment, racial harassment, religious, disability, this is what I do and have done all the time for 30 years, okay? So we can disagree. Right? We can disagree, but when we disagree, you probably better remember that I've probably done it more than you have. Okay? And I'm not telling you stuff because I'm just making it up. I'm telling you stuff because it's real. The other thing is I have a fair number of examples, and unfortunately for you, most of them are true. Okay? Well, they're all true. Frankly, they're all true. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about discrimination today a little differently than you normally talk about discrimination. Okay. Anybody in here never had an anti-discrimination training? Right? Because you've worked for more than 5 minutes. So you've had a discrimination training. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about what's called implicit discrimination. That is discrimination where you are doing something or making decisions without even really knowing you're doing it. It affects a lot of different people. We see it a lot in race-based discrimination. We also see it a lot in sex and sex harassment. So we're going to talk about implicit discrimination and what that looks like. We're going to talk about professionalism in the workplace. Because the EEOC, do you guys want chairs? That just seems very uncomfortable. Okay. It's because the EEOC and the Iowa Civil Rights Commission literally think being rude is the gateway drug to being a harasser. It's sort of like, reefer madness back in the 30s. It is the gateway drug to being a harasser. So we're going to talk some about professionalism, and we're going to talk some about harassment, okay? You have all had harassment training. So I am going to make some assumptions. I am going to assume that you should not take naked pictures of yourself and send it to your fellow employees. Just nod yes. Please nod yes. I am going to assume you know that you should not take naked pictures of your fellow employees and send them to other people, particularly without their permission. I have that case. Nod yes. I am going to assume you know that you should not grab, pat, stroke, kiss, or otherwise assault, because that is assault when it is unwelcome, your fellow employees. Are we all agreed on that? Okay? You're not agreed?
I told her I was going to cuddle her because I was cold.
Okay, so if it is unwelcome, it is an assault. Okay, she had that face, and I'm like, oh, apparently we need to go over there. Okay, it's all good. All right, I want you guys to not. You understand that you should not make fun of people who belong to different communities or who may think differently or be a different color than you are. You understand all of those things. Yes? Keep nodding. I want to be comfortable. Keep nodding. Okay, you understand that. You understand that if you tell dirty jokes or jokes about sex or you make fun of people who are lesbian or gay or you do any of that kind of stuff, that is wrong. Okay? I am going to assume then, if that's all part of like standard sexual harassment training, right? That's all that you all have done at least one sexual harassment training, and that's what they tell you, right? They tell you not to touch other people, not to talk about sex. I'm going to assume that you understand you're not supposed to ask people about their sex lives. You're not supposed to brag about your own sex life. Okay? You're not supposed to do all that kind of stuff, because that's what they tell you. Have I missed anything that they tell you in sex harassment training? Don't touch, don't say stuff, don't tell dirty jokes. If people are uncomfortable, stop. Did I miss anything? Okay, if any of you do that, I am going to assume you're an idiot. That is what I'm going to assume, because you all had training. You all know that that stuff is wrong. Okay, you just flat out know. You know it's wrong. Okay, now sometimes people think the rules don't apply to them. The rules apply to all of you. Sometimes people think they won't get caught. Most people get caught at some point, and if you put it on the internet and you think, oh, no one's going to find that, 30 people are going to print that out and bring it to her. Okay, that is exactly what's going to happen. So we've just done, right, the normal sex harassment training. Don't do any of this stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk about some other things. We have a continuum of issues. We have civility on one end and criminal conduct on the other. Okay? Civility is perfect civility. It's Miss Manners, Emily Post, it's all the rules. It's knowing if it's the fish fork or the pickle fork. Okay? That is perfect civility. Anybody in here capable of perfect civility? And if you raise your hand, I'm gonna call you a liar. Anybody's capable of perfect civility? Because I'm not, right? Hardly anybody is, right? On the other side, we have criminal conduct. Yeah, those guys. Okay? And I feel comfortable saying criminal conduct because he's indicted and he's in jail. Okay? So we're talking about criminal conduct on that end. The problem is most of what we talk about when we talk about lack of professionalism, when we talk about harassment, when we talk about inappropriate behavior, it's somewhere in the middle. Right? It's somewhere in that kind of messy middle. And the reason, do you want me to wait? I'm really loud, it's hard to hear when I'm talking. So it's somewhere in the middle. Who are you looking for?
Nope.
I love hospitals. They are so fun. Okay, so and one of the things I want you to think about when we think about the middle is that harassment isn't about.
You were hiding. Yeah.
Okay, harassment isn't about how you intended something to be taken typically. It is about how people perceive it. It is about how it makes that person feel. It is that they feel harassed, demeaned, threatened. 10 years ago, I almost never got a complaint that people felt physically threatened just by language, and now that's almost every single complaint I get is it will be looped in with and I felt physically threatened. Okay, just by language, and so that is important. So a lot of what we talk about is in the middle, right? And we're all really different, right? Things that might offend one person don't always offend me because I see it a lot, right? Because I see those kinds of things, and so you have to think about that continuum. Okay, we don't want to talk about them. Let's talk about general principles. Okay, the rules apply to everybody. The same rules apply to everyone. Okay, doesn't matter if you're the top person in the institution. It doesn't matter if you're an intern. The same rules apply. No one should be harassed in their workplace, and if you are harassing someone, we need to deal with it. It doesn't matter where you fit within the institution. Okay? We also all have an obligation to set an example. It is really hard when people come and complain about harassment when they've been engaged in it. Okay, it just makes it a lot harder to manage. You have a responsibility to set an example. Here's the one that probably on this slide is the most important thing that I want to talk to people about. I can't write enough rules to keep people from being idiots. There's not enough ink in the world. There's not enough paper in the world to write a rule for every single thing you should not do, right? There is no way for me to do that. We have all worked with someone who likes to go right up to the edge, right? We all know somebody like that, who wants to go right up to the edge, or maybe just a rule, or is looking for how the rule bends, right? Or the loophole in the rule. We have all dealt with somebody like that, okay? I can't write enough rules. So what we talk about is behavior. How do you behave? And that's this one. So in my family, we talk about rules a little bit, but we have basically 10 rules, 10 kind of guidelines. That's number 3. Don't be a jerk. Do not be a jerk. And here's the thing. You know when you're being a jerk. You totally know when you are being a jerk, when you are making someone else uncomfortable, when they are looking away from you, when they are getting pink, when they are avoiding you. You know you're being a jerk. You know that some of the things you say are jerky, right? They happen. But if you keep saying them, that's going to be a problem. Don't be a jerk, right? And this is my Mike story. So I have a guy named Mike in a hospital who has a crush on a nurse, and he is not just a jerk, but he is creepy. You're kind of sad you sat right there, aren't you? Yeah. He's really creepy. He does things like he goes to security to see where she is, and then he texts her, I see you're on floor 3. Yeah, see, I wasn't making it up. He's creepy, all right? So we haul him in and we say, if you continue to text her at work, we are going to fire you because not only is this horrible, it's creepy, okay? What do you think happens 15 minutes later?
He did it again.
He texts her. Of course he did it again because the world is full of stupid. He did it again, okay? What do you think he said when he did it again? Because we hauled him back in. What do you think he said when he did it again?
You got me in trouble.
Oh, see, now that no one said that to me before, but that is one of the things people say. You got me in trouble. How dare you? Okay. What he said is I wasn't at work. He was in the parking lot. Oh. He left the floor, went out to the parking lot, and texted her. Now, do you think when we said don't be creepy and text her, that we meant when you're standing in the hallway or ever? Ever. Behavior, not just rules, right? He was looking for an out. He still got fired, by the way. He was looking for an out. Yeah, I am not the right person to try that kind of thing on. No. He still got fired, by the way, because we're talking about behavior, right? We can't set enough rules to make people behave like good people, right? So we can't do it. So what we're talking about is don't be a jerk, right? Really just literally try to think about how other people are. Anybody in here? Okay, who's a hugger? Somebody in here is a hugger. Okay, I'm not using you. Oh, I like that. I like that. So you're a hugger?
No.
Yeah. No?
She is. Yes, she is.
Okay, I could totally tell she was lying. Would you prefer I not talk to you? Because honestly, I don't want to be a jerk either.
No, go ahead.
How do you know who to hug? Well, you knew it was coming. Which I didn't use you. You're too quick. How do you know who to hug?
If they say it's okay.
So you're lying. She is lying to me. She is just lying to me. Okay, liar. Who else? Who else is a hugger? Okay, how do you know who to hug?
I don't know. I just do. I don't hug people that I don't really.
You're clairvoyant?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a magic 8 ball.
I'll take one later.
On Megan's behalf, she usually does ask.
I do.
No, it's more of a,
Yeah. That's her way.
Oh, I'm starting to be really sad I asked this question. Okay.
Me too.
Here's the deal, okay? I'm not telling you not to have human contact, but I am going to tell you, and we're going to talk about this later, you don't know. Okay, and you seem very nice, okay, and she seems mean, but you seem very nice. She threw you right under the bus, I'm just saying. Okay. But here's the thing about that, right? Hugging is meant to give comfort. It's meant to give connection. It's meant to give support. Okay? Anybody in here ever had an uncomfortable hug?
Not from me.
Okay, here we go. She is given a dispensation. We are no longer talking about her, okay? But we've all had an uncomfortable hug. Sometimes those things are sexual. Sometimes they're just creepy. Sometimes they're weird. I don't believe you gave one of those hugs. She's already said she didn't, okay? But it's hard to know, right? It is hard to know. And here's the thing, okay? I got a hug when I came in. But no, wait. Wait. And she said, because I haven't seen her for a while, and she said, is it okay if I hug you? Right? We don't have a power differential. If I said no, it would have been just fine, because if you fire me, I don't know, I'm fine. But people, one of the things that we talk about when we talk about hugs is power differentials, right? If you are my boss, it is harder for me to say, don't be a jerk. If you are my boss, it is harder to say, please don't do that. She's not, I mean, technically you're my client, but you're not my boss, right? And so that's a different dynamic. And so we never want to forget that there's a power dynamic attached to those things. And physical touch, in addition to being a way to provide support and kindness, is a way to show dominance, right? Is a way to show I'm in charge. And so we always want to be aware of that. Touch has a big role, particularly in healthcare and in hospitals and that kind of thing, but it can also be damaging. So I want you to keep that in mind. It's always ongoing and not one and done. Okay, it's never one and done. It's not like you build up, you behave well on Monday so you can be a jerk on Wednesday or hug extra people. You can't do that. Okay. See, she threw you under the bus, I'm telling you. And we always want to be specific to real life and to who you are, right? So we talk about things in a healthcare setting that we should not be talking about in other places. We talk about things in a healthcare setting that maybe you don't talk about in a manufacturing floor. Different, right? Every situation is different and that kind of thing. So let's talk about perception. So this is the implicit or implied discrimination component. Okay. Anybody have any questions about the hugging before we move on? Anybody want to hug because they feel damaged to that? Not from me. But she's volunteering. Okay. So let's talk about perception. This is implicit or implied discrimination, and the reason we talk about it is because it is showing up in almost every single case I have now. That there is some kind of subconscious or implicit discrimination. So we want to talk a little bit about that. It can be a little hard to talk about this, so I do have a couple stories about my family. For those of you who don't want to hear about my family, too late. I'm trying to think how to describe this. So it is sort of how we think about the world, but not really consciously. Anybody in here have kids? Any? Those of you who do not have children, were you at least a child at some point?
Just last week.
Just last week? Yeah, that's that whole adulting thing. Okay. Anybody have a kid who was big for his or her age? A big kid. You? Anybody else? Okay, you. So you got you two. Okay, so I may be calling on you. Are you prepared for this? Mm-hmm. Okay. I have a kid who is big for his age. He is 14 years old, he is 6'2", and he weighs 180 pounds, and he's had broken bones quite recently, so I know his growth plates are open. Okay, so he is still growing. He has been big since he was little. He has always been big, okay? And you're like, why am I hearing about this woman's child? Okay, I'm about to tell you why. So Cam, his name is Cameron. Cam and I are in Super Target when he is 3. And I am talking with him about a toy he wants, right? Because my son sounds like me, so it's always a negotiation. So we're talking about a toy in Super Target, and I talk to him about this toy, and there is a woman behind us, and she says, he is too old for that toy. Okay? My son would be happy to tell you that I am the wrong person to say things like that to. And I turned around and I said, no, he's not. And she said, yes, he is. And then I said, he's 3. And she said, no, he's not. Now, on one hand, we have a woman who has a child in tow, B, an actual birth certificate, and C, a C-section scar to prove it. Okay? This is my kid. On the other hand, we have a stranger, weird lady from Super Target. Who knows knows how old this kid is? Are we going to go with A, the woman who actually gave birth to him, or B, the woman who just bumped into them at Super Target?
I'm going to pick A.
You're going with A?
I'm going to go with A.
Good choice. Excellent choice.
Because I've been in that shoe.
Yeah, because you've been there, right? You have totally been there. But that's the thing about, so that's implicit discrimination, right? That's implicit discrimination. We make assumptions based on just what we see without really knowing the facts, okay? So what does the world tell us about when a kid is big, what happens to them?
They get teased a lot.
They get teased a lot, right? But they also get held to a higher standard.
Yes.
Because people think do you find that true too? Because people think they're older than they really are. Now think about my kid, right? Super big vocabulary, because he's an only and his mom's a lawyer. Super big, he couldn't escape it, sorry. Super big vocabulary and a big kid. People constantly think he's older than he really is, and he gets held, just like your kids did and your kids do, to a higher standard, right? So this idea of implicit discrimination, think about this. He's 3 years old, and people are making decisions about who he should be with knowing nothing. Okay, that's really what implicit discrimination is. What is the other thing that media tells us about big kids? What do they tell us about kids who are big? And you don't have to have a big kid to know this. You just have to have seen any movie starring children.
They're usually the stupid ones.
Stupid? Are they mean?
They can be.
Dumb?
Or they can be dopey.
Yep. Dumb, dopey bullies. Anybody ever see a kids movie where it's a little teeny tiny pixie blonde who's the bully? Well, Phineas and Ferb is the only one where the blonde is the bully. But in general, because that's the stereotype, that's the implicit discrimination, that the big kid is big, dumb, slow, and stupid. Okay? Think that's fair? Think that hurts kids like that? Okay? Your kid's slow?
No, and mine would have let you know, but none of that was him.
Mouthy. So they're mouthy. I like it. I like mouthy. Slow and stupid and mean? Is that your kids?
Melody know-it-all.
So no mom is going to admit slow, stupid, and mean, but mostly they're not slow, stupid, and mean. Okay, and I have Cam's permission to talk about him. Cam's a big kid, right? He gets asked to tutor a lot because he's not stupid and he's not mean. He also plays a couple of sports. He plays hockey. He's getting ready to go on the ice one day, and there is Aiden, who is Cam's age, much smaller. Much, much smaller. And Aiden is on the ice, and the thing about the small guys on the ice is they tend to be quick and they score a lot of goals. They're very quick. Aiden and Cam have not been on the ice at the same time. Cam is coming onto the ice. Woman behind me says, "Oh, that's a big, dumb, slow kid." Literally says, "That's a big, dumb, slow kid." Now, you totally know I want my kid to pound her kid into the ice at this point, right? It's called chirping in hockey, and I don't say anything because I don't fight with the parents. It doesn't seem fair because I fight for a living, right? And so it doesn't seem fair to me. So, Cam gets on the ice. Aiden is over here. Cam is 6'2". Aiden is 4 foot tall. Okay? What do you think happens when a 4 foot tall, 85-pound kid skates headfirst into a 6 foot 285-pound kid who is planted? What do you think happens?
Did he pass out? It was.
Boom!
Yeah.
Is what happens. Cam scoops up the puck and he scores. And the woman behind me says, I guess he wasn't that slow. Okay? Implicit discrimination. The assumption. But here's the other thing about implicit discrimination. Did that help Cam? The idea that he was big, so he would be slow, he wouldn't be quick, it helped him. And it has helped him a number of times when little kids think they're going to run into him. Okay? So sometimes those kinds of beliefs that we have can help other people. They can make you more disposed to like them. Okay? So a couple things I would say. I love a redheaded boy because I have one. I have a redheaded boy. And so if I see a redheaded boy, whether they're a little kid or a guy that got in the elevator, I almost always smile because I have a redheaded boy. That's implicit discrimination. It's not based on anything that relates to them. It's based on my experience with my child. Okay? I also love a smart mouth. I completely, because I come from a family of smart mouths, right? I also work with docs. That should just tell you something right there, right? Because docs usually speak their mind. I like blunt and I like smart mouth, okay? Works for me. But if you grew up in a family where that wasn't prized, or where people aren't particularly verbal or are very introverted, your bias might be the opposite. That might make you uncomfortable. Okay, you might not like it. Maybe a redheaded boy picked on you in 3rd grade, right? And you're not going to like it, but that's how it works. Sometimes it works to our advantage, sometimes it works to our disadvantage, but it's hardly ever fair. Okay, it is hardly ever fair. And so we ask people to think about it because it is frequently unfair. Okay? Anything else you want to share about your kids?
No, that's okay today.
You're good? All right. So, social media. We're going to talk a little bit about social media. So pretty much everybody cares about social media. In my last session, 4 people did not have a social media account. I thought that was very impressive. Did anybody here not have social media? Okay. Good. I like you guys. Anybody, do not raise your hands. Anybody in here can think back and they ever put something on social media they kind of wish they hadn't put there? And if none of you have done that, you are once again lying to me. Okay? So let's talk about social media. You got to keep confidential stuff confidential, right? So we talk about protected company information. Really, don't talk about patients on social media. Just don't talk about patients on social media. You can call them patient A, you can do all that kind of stuff, and it is still going to crop up. It is still going to be a problem, right? I've had people post things like, the fat patient in 402 fell out of bed, and I'm surprised he didn't break a hip, and my God, how did he get so fat? Okay? No, this is literally true. How did he get so fat? Who do you think that particular person had friended on social media?
The patient?
His kid. Right? His kid. And I'm sorry, is that you or me? That might be me. Sorry about that. So had friended his kid. So we have those kinds of issues. You also have to be really careful about the information that you share on social media. And so I am telling you this just because we've had a big spate of this. You should already know this, but again, I've had a bunch of cases. Don't post your W-2 on Twitter. I've had a whole bunch of these where people have posted their W-2s on Twitter. Do not do that. I had at least a couple where people have posted their paycheck stubs on Twitter. Not a good choice. I had a woman who posted the front and back of her credit card because her child was traveling overseas and she wanted to get him the information so he could use it. So she posted it on Twitter. Okay? Don't do that. That's not a good idea. But this describes my job, okay? My job is I didn't realize anyone would do something like that, and now I need to remind other people not to, okay? There is a lot of stuff like that. Be respectful. You don't have to be respectful all the time, and if you really don't like somebody else's cheesecake recipe, feel free to say you don't like their I don't care about that, okay? What I do care about is when we do things online that either lead to harassment claims at work or minimize our ability to care for our patients, okay? I don't think that anybody in healthcare has an easy job. I don't care what level, I don't care who you are, I don't care what level you're at, I don't care if we're talking about maintenance or we're talking about med surg. It doesn't matter. I don't think there's an easy job in healthcare. If for no other reason, because nobody wants to be here when they come in. I don't think there's an easy job. And there are a lot of things that people do on social media that make it harder for them to do their job. They're not technically illegal, they're not technically harassment, but they certainly can fall into those categories. So I had a person who worked with a group, and she posted online that we wouldn't have so many diabetes patients if they would quit stuffing their faces with cake, if they would quit drinking soda, and if they would just get off their fat behinds and exercise. Okay? How do you think that makes the patient base feel? Right? You might think that. Right? You might think that when you work with diabetes patients, but when you post that, so first of all, how do you think I even know about this post? How do you think I know about it?
Because it happened.
It did not actually end up in a lawsuit, but it did end up in a series of patient complaints. Yeah. Because patients follow different physicians, they follow different lines, and a bunch of them called and complained. Okay? When you do something like that, does it make it easier or harder to do your job?
harder.
Much harder. Because, right, when people are overweight, if you tell them they're overweight, that is not new or a surprise. Right? People who are overweight pretty much know when they're overweight, okay? And probably some doctor has already told them that, okay? Number 2, society already makes people who are different, whether that is weight or anything else, feel a little weird, okay? And there's a lot of fat shaming that occurs, and so those patients have less of an incentive to be truthful with you as a provider. They get ashamed of what they eat and how much exercise they do. It makes your job not just harder because you've lost trust, but also harder because you don't get good information. Okay? I also had somebody in a different clinic post that they hated treating millennials and they wished all the millennials would quit coming to the clinic. Because all they ever do, every time they get a hangnail, they come into the ED or the clinic, and that they hated dealing with millennials. How do you think we found out about that one? Same thing, patient complaints. Right? That they no longer feel comfortable going to this mid-level provider, and that they are shifting their care because they feel disrespected and harassed. Okay? They feel disrespected and harassed. So there are times online, it might not be purely discriminatory, it might not be a protected category, because being a millennial isn't necessarily a protected category, but it still feels like harassment. Okay, it still feels like that, and so we have that issue. Here's my other thing. Don't break the law and then post about it. Don't break the law. Okay? Got a nurse, stole a bunch of medication from MedSurg, put it all out in front of her in a big semicircle and posted it online. Party time.
Ooh.
Okay? That would be something that the DEA becomes involved in. That would be something that the Iowa Board of Nursing becomes involved in. And that would be something that you get fired for. And yet she did that. Okay? I have people who post, I have a woman who posted a scam on how she was getting opioids from the place she worked. Chapter and verse. She posted the whole thing about how she was getting opioids, which has a lot to do with waste and how she was recording waste. But she posted the whole thing online. That is also the DEA, licensing, and a bunch of other things. I have also had people steal things from where they work, right? Steal things from where they work and post all the things they've stolen when they have the company name on the front of them, okay? Post all the things they've stolen. So here is what I say about this. I would really prefer that you not break the law. I think you're not going to talk to me if you break the law because I don't do criminal law, but you're going to talk to somebody else and it's going to be really unfun. Right? I don't like the idea that you would have to do that, so I really don't think you should break the law. But if you are breaking it, don't post it. Do not put it online for everyone and their second cousin to see. Because the first woman with the drugs who lost her license, the first exhibit in front of the Board of Nursing was the social media post. Okay? Don't break the law, and then don't post pictures about breaking the law, okay? Protect your privacy rights of you and other people. One of the things I want people to understand is if you use like a cell phone to do work kinds of things, I had somebody who was a wound care nurse, if you're a wound care nurse and you're taking wound care photos, you're texting about work things, if we end up with litigation, they might ask for your phone. Okay, and there's going to be stuff on your phone you don't want me to see, you don't want the other side to see, that we don't want to do. So do remember that when you put that kind of stuff on your own phone, we're going to have issues. And then standards of conduct still apply, right? It doesn't, if you are harassing someone who you work with, if you are hitting on them, if you are engaging in sexual banter, if you're doing any of that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter to me where you are. It doesn't matter if you're at the Casey's, it doesn't matter to me if you're at a bar, it doesn't matter if you're out there with Mike in the parking lot. It doesn't matter. Standards of conduct still apply. Okay, I literally have people say, I can do whatever I want when I'm at home. And then they sexually harass a nurse or they sexually harass a CNA, not going to be okay. Okay, the conduct. I had one that was an ageist claim. I had two nurses who were fighting with each other, and one nurse, when she went home, sent out a bunch of social media posts about how the other nurse was an old bat, an old bag, wouldn't know good practices if it bit her on the nose, compared her to a dinosaur, a bunch of other things. And when they came in the next day, her entire excuse was that I didn't do it at work. It's still harassment because you're targeting the person you work with. Okay? This is the other thing I hear. I have a right to my opinion. Right? I have a right to my opinion. You absolutely have a right to your opinion. Unequivocally, absolutely have a right to your opinion. Anybody in here like the Three Stooges? Somebody's got to like the Three Stooges. Who likes the Three? You like the Three Stooges, right? You are wrong. They are awful. In my opinion, that is your opinion. We both have a right to our own opinions. I really do hate the Three Stooges, by the way. You really do have a right to your own opinion. What you don't have a right to do is harass me, make me feel bad, or beat me up with it. Okay? You have a right to think whatever you want to think, but you don't always have a right to trumpet it, right? Sometimes the way anti-harassment works is stop. Stop. Just stop doing it. So everyone does. You completely have a right to your opinion, but you don't have a right to make other people feel bad with it, okay? Or to make them feel less, or to make them feel threatened, or to make them feel belittled or uncomfortable, okay? So your rights stop where they start infringing upon mine. So let's talk about professionalism a little bit. Anybody got a guess on what I'm about to say about professionalism? Got a guess? You're in late in the day, you need more caffeine? Caffeine? You're just not even caffeinated. What are you doing? Hugs? She's still offering them. Okay, so let's talk about professionalism. One of the things that we talk about is professionalism and how that plays with people. Anybody? Okay, so I always ask everybody this. Anybody in here ever watch a YouTube video? Okay, what kind of YouTube videos do you watch? You don't have to tell me if they're embarrassing. You don't have to tell me. She can't remember. You're no good. What do you watch?
Hot for a while.
Yeah.
Sometimes documentaries or just music to listen to.
Oh, you're no good. Who else? What else? Anybody else watch YouTube videos?
Yep.
What do you watch?
I get a lot of things that pop up like save the animals, this animal was
You guys are all goody two-shoes in here.
Dr. Dimple Popper.
Dr. Good.
Yeah, there you go.
I knew that would get her.
You know, I've watched that, but only when she's doing a surgical procedure, because I want to see her surgical technique, and she does not keep a sterile field. Let me just mention that. But I want to see her surgical technique, but I just don't get that. Okay, somebody else watches YouTube videos.
Turning a short bus into a camper.
So you can hug more. She's going to be the hugging vagabond. Okay. What do you watch?
My son watches a lot of those gaming videos.
That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so you watch the gaming videos.
I don't myself.
Well, okay, so I see a lot of humor that I don't understand because it only appeals to teenage boys. Okay? It could appeal to some of you in here, but I'm just going to go with teenage boys right now. So I see a lot of humor I don't understand. I also see a lot of gamer videos, right? Because he likes to show me stuff. He wants me to be involved. Here is the thing about gamer videos, okay? Gamers, for the most part, use profanity like we would use a comma. So whenever there would be a pause, they throw in a lot, and I don't mean mild profanity, I mean a lot of profanity. And if there would be an exclamation point, it is over the top profanity. I had to go to the Dictionary of American Slang one time to figure out what they were saying, okay? Profanity. But it's like the lack of professionalism. The thing that I have noticed with my son's friends, particularly, is that more profanity creeps into their language because they hear it. They watch a lot of gamer videos, they hang with the same kids, and they hear a lot of profanity, so it creeps in no matter how many conversations I have with them. It creeps in. That's what a lack of professionalism does. Okay? It starts out as something small, but it creeps in, and that's what the EEOC and the Iowa Civil Rights Commission worry about, is that it leads to bigger problems, right? That when you're not polite, when you're not professional, it leads to these bigger problems. These are the top 10 complaints. So you basically survey a whole bunch of people. This is what they say that they think is not professional. Being late, crabby, bad language, okay? Gossip, and we all know gossip is probably inappropriate dress. Here's just my tip on this. Unless we are at the beach, I do not want to know if you have an innie or an outie. I do not want to see your belly button. I don't care what your belly button looks like. Are you okay with that? Yeah. Okay. I don't want to see your belly button. I have been to the bank, and the woman who was taking my money, I could see her belly button. That makes me uncomfortable. Okay, I don't like that. Refusing to help, lying. I think we can all probably agree that lying is probably bad, right? The overshare. You have all worked with someone who overshares. You have all worked with someone who has said something to you that you really wish you had never heard, and that makes it kind of hard to look at them and not fall on the floor laughing, right? You have all had the overshare. And you have also had people mad at you because you knew things about them that they wish you didn't know, right? Because the problem with oversharers is they regret it, right? Later. They regret it later. So the overshare. Politics. Politics never used to be on this list. When you interviewed people, politics was not on the list. It was personal hygiene, right? Personal hygiene was on it. Now politics is on it. Because frankly, people won't shut up. Here's something that I always say to people about all of this, but particularly about politics. Do you think if you are the loudest person in the room, that will convince everyone else? If I don't agree with you, if you just get louder, will I change my mind? Do you think? If I don't agree with you and I ask you to stop, if you just keep going, will that change my mind? Right. That's that issue, right? And you're going to see a slide in a minute that says sometimes we need to just stop, okay? Lack of organization or being sloppy. One of the interesting things about these, and I didn't really realize this until I started doing training that involved this professionalism, is that sometimes how we view that stuff also plays into implicit bias, what we've just been talking about things that are both gender and culturally related, okay? Can you see anything up there that you think might be gender related, that might be perceived differently by gender?
Inappropriate dress.
Yeah, inappropriate dress. How about crabby? Okay, statistically, women smile more often than men. And women are asked to smile more often than men. And a woman who is grumpier gets called on it more frequently, right? Because we're expected to be helpers, right? That is an implicit bias. It is a stereotype. And remember, not everybody does that. Not everybody thinks that. It's not right, but it is something that happens, right? So being crabby can sometimes be, or being perceived as being crabby can be kind of a gender stereotype sometimes. What about bad language? Can women or men get away with more bad language?
Men.
She didn't even hesitate. Men. Yes. Okay, again, statistically, and I will tell you in my complaints, right, if a woman uses a lot of profanity, it is more likely to show up in the complaint than if a man uses profanity. Again, that's implicit bias. That's how we think about gender stereotyping, how we think about those kinds of things. Those are both, right, common things that might be different based on gender. Right? So sometimes when we talk about professionalism, we have to also think about where it's coming from, right? Cultural bias is really from where you're sort of from. So I went to Duke. When I went to college and law school, I went to Duke in North Carolina. And we have a ton of people who, in law school particularly, who are from China. Okay? A lot of them are Chinese judges. They're at Duke for a period of time. But here's the thing that they talk to us about when we start, and that is very true. If you come in, and these are not, let's presume these are not all your friends. Okay, and you come in, and she is sitting right there. Do you sit right next to her, or you sit down here? So you have one. So like say you came in, it's me and you. We're the only two people in the room. I'm sitting at that end of the table. Would you sit right next to me, or would you sit over here?
I'd probably sit next to you.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's not very American. No, but the cultural bias in the United States would be as if she was sitting here, all of this was empty, I would sit at least 2 seats away from her. Because Americans like space. We have much greater space when we talk to people than we would say if we were from Latin America. We have greater space when we talk to people than we would if we were Chinese. And when the Chinese students come in, they literally sit right next to each other because it is a cultural perception. And so sometimes those things, right, you have to think about the other culture and the other cultural issues that attach to them. So again, we've talked about that. General incivility and bias can be kind of the gateway drug, and so we talk about that. And so we're going to talk about what's called CREW. So CREW is civility, respect, and engagement in the workforce. That is from Canada. It is a program from Canada that they also use like in the VA, but I basically just stole the name, okay, because I kind of like the name, so we're not talking about the actual CREW program. Civility, respect, engagement, and work ethic, okay? Civility is the interpersonal rules of engagement. It's courtesy and it's being polite, right? Everybody in here go to kindergarten at some point? Or something that was like a kindergarten? If you're homeschooled, something that was like kindergarten? Okay, what do they tell you in kindergarten?
Be nice.
Play nice. Play nice, say please, Say thank you. Don't bite anybody. Take that to heart. No biting. Don't bite anybody. Okay. Now, pretty basic rules, right? Those are the rules of civility. Are you polite to your family? Think about this for a second. Are you really polite to your family? Because a lot of us are not. And a lot of us take family for granted. And we forget please and thank you and being nice, right? Unless we're raising small children and we're trying to set a good example, a lot of times we forget that. That also happens at work. The people you know the best are the ones you sort of ignore sometimes, are the ones that you don't trot out your company manners for, right? And so at work, civility can take a real hit simply because you know each other so well, or because you're friends, or because you work together. But just because I know you well, does that mean I don't need to thank you? Right? Or when people say thank you to you, doesn't it make you feel a little more appreciated and a little less annoyed? Okay? So we want to think about that. We want to think about being polite. Respect is all about listening. It's about listening to other people, hearing alternative viewpoints. Here is the thing I want to say about respect, which I think is really important. Respect does not mean ignoring a problem. It never means ignoring a problem. And if you have a problem, if you are harassed, or you feel like you've been harassed, or you have another problem, and I don't care if it's sex harassment or age or race or any of it, the institution wants you to come forward. I want you to come forward, the institution wants you to come forward, because we want to deal with that stuff earlier rather than later. Because if you wait until it gets worse and worse and worse, then you pretty much want them dead. Right? You want us to cut their heads off, put it outside in a pike for the crows to eat. Okay? You want to go all Reformation on them. Okay? We want to get to those kinds of problems earlier. We want to know when things are problematic because that's when we can make change. And so it never means don't tell. It means understand that there's multiple viewpoints. We talk about honesty without being mean. Some of you guys did crucial conversations. That's a very common one in the hospitals. And that's really what that's about. It's about being clear, being kind of clean in how you communicate. But it isn't about covering it up. The thing I hear in Iowa all the time, this is my Iowa thing, I don't want to get anybody into trouble. Okay? Well, people's behavior needs to be corrected. And if we wait too long, you're getting them into worse trouble. Okay? Communication, this is how we sort of think about communication when we talk about HR. First of all, is it true? Every single person in this room has had somebody say something that wasn't true about them. We have all had that experience, right? And this is one of those things that plays into gossip. It's not true and people say it anyway because it makes a good story, okay? So when we're communicating, is it true? Does it need to be said? Is this something we need to say, or is this just something I feel like saying, like one of those housewives from the 12th level of hell? Okay? Am I the right person to say it? Right? I have a case in my firm right now where the person is not a manager, is not in charge of a certain department, and is constantly telling them how to do their job. Constantly giving them tips and advice and butting in and telling them how to do their job, and eventually got fired for it. Right? Are you the right person to say it? Also, when we talk, who's a manager in here? Anybody a manager? Okay. Sometimes it's the manager's job to say it. Sometimes the manager needs to involve somebody else. We want to know that the right people know the right things. And one of the things that happens, and you know, like, look, HR, health information management, hockey moms, completely my people. Okay, those are my people. But one of the things that happens sometimes to HR is you all don't tell them. Okay, you don't tell them early enough. You don't tell them where there are problems. You don't tell them they can't fix stuff they don't know about, right? So we want to make sure that we know about it. And then is now the time to say it? Is this when we're going to say this kind of thing? Sometimes respect means stop. Okay, it just means stop talking sometimes. If someone says, please don't. If someone says, I don't want to talk about that. If someone says, that's none of your business. It's time to stop. That makes me uncomfortable. Stop. Okay? Just stop. That is the best thing that you can do. Engagement is training, taking responsibility. It's that, those of you with kids, after school specials, ever see an after school special? The more you know, the more you grow, big little thing, right? Chrissy, you're like, yes. The more you know, the more. Don't they all have a see something, say something? They all have a see something, say something banner. That is from Wells Fargo Arena. Okay, that is if you see something, say something. Did you see something suspicious? Then say something to make it right. Okay, and that is what we mean by engagement. Almost all the schools now have some kind of training for what they call bystander engagement or bystander training, and it's about bullying. Okay, if you see somebody being bullied, what can you do to help? Right? Some of the things you can do to help is you can be there and be supportive of them. Sometimes you can say to the bully, don't do that. Sometimes you get a teacher. That is the same thing here. Sometimes you can be part of their support network. Sometimes you can say something, and sometimes you can get management. Right? That is what see something, say something means. It means bring the problem to their attention before it gets out of hand. And that applies whether you're in kindergarten or whether you work here. Okay? It applies consistently because we want you to be engaged. We really want you to be engaged. That's how you create a workplace where you can get your job done with the most efficiency and the least hassle. Right? And that's where we want you to be engaged. I'm going to skip forward because we're almost out of time. Okay, this is what happens when I get a harassment complaint. That's how I talk to everybody. We call that the equal opportunity jerk defense. You are a jerk to everyone. Do you think that's a very successful defense? Just go with no. It's not. It's not a successful defense because if you are treating someone differently and they are a member of a category, it is still going to end up being harassment and it is still going to be problematic. She's complaining to get attention. That is possible, but not very likely because the kind of attention you get for complaints are the wrong kind. Not very likely. I know my audience. I get a lot of I know my audience. The sheer fact that there is a complaint is proof that you don't know your audience. And here's the thing, your audience changes. For those of you who are managers, if you say something or do something on a Monday and then you have to discipline that employee on a Wednesday, I'm telling you now, whatever happened on Monday is coming back to bite you. Okay? All that stuff, when I have a manager say to me, well, we're friends, I know we're in trouble. Right? Because you say things to your friends that you don't say to the people you manage, and it will come back when you have to discipline those people. So we have to think about that. She started it or he started it, yeah, not very successful. He, she liked it. Again, pretty clear they didn't like it because they're here complaining. Okay, and maybe they liked it for 6 months and now you've crossed whatever invisible line and now we don't like it anymore. This is my favorite. It was just a joke. Okay, humor, like the Three Stooges, is subjective, right? Humor is very, very subjective. But humor that hurts someone or makes them feel uncomfortable or makes them feel belittled or makes them feel less than, or what I get all the time now, unsafe. Okay, I get a lot of I feel unsafe. That's not humor. Okay, and maybe it's humor to you, but it's not going to be acceptable in the workplace. It can't be that kind of stuff. And I also get that's not harassment. And that is the final thing I say to everybody, which is you don't get to decide. Right? The people who decide are the people who have to assess it and the people who feel harassed. A lot of people say, well, they didn't complain for a long time. They didn't complain. It can't be harassment because they didn't tell me to stop. Okay? If you are harassing me, I'm going to tell you to stop, but I have an extremely strong personality, which I am sure is shocking to each and every one of you. I have a very strong personality. Plus, I don't have a power differential, right? In my law firm, it takes a vote of 80% of the partners to fire me. That is a lot of people who would want to have to get rid of me and take over my workload. Okay, so I don't have a ton of power differential there. That is not true when you're the boss and the person who feels harassed is not. Okay, that is not true. I get a lot of self-blame and guilt. This third one, I only hear that in Iowa. I would literally, if I'm in like New Jersey, I never hear that. Okay, but in Iowa I hear, I don't want to get anybody into trouble. Okay. When you get people into trouble early, a lot of times that stops them from having a lot of trouble later. Okay, so that is what we're really looking at. Sometimes people are unaware, but these last two are the big ones why people don't say anything. They're afraid of being retaliated against. They're afraid of reputational damage. They're afraid of you treating them differently because they made a complaint. And so that is the final thing I want to say to everybody. We don't retaliate. If someone brings a complaint forward, if someone is concerned about something, we don't tell them they can't do that. We don't tell them it's not fair. We don't treat them badly because they had a complaint. We assess it. right? Now, when we assess it, we're not always going to agree with you, right? Maybe we didn't find that it was harassment. Maybe other people didn't view it the same way you viewed it. Or maybe it is harassment and other things will be done. But it's a process, okay? But one of the things people are afraid of is not how management's going to treat them, but how their fellow employees treat them. That they're a killjoy and they're no fun and they can't take a joke. Okay, so do keep that in mind if let's hope it never happens, but keep in mind that when people bring complaints forward, sometimes it takes a lot of guts to do that, to bring a complaint forward and to raise those issues. Okay, so this hospital has a very strict policy against retaliation, and I want people to remember that if they feel retaliated against, I want management to know. Okay, questions? Issues? Bad stories you want to share? Jokes that will get you sent up for harassment. Okay, then I'm calling it good.